Have you ever looked at any of the aliens within Ben's Omnitrix and just wondered, what does that alien taste like? No? Just me? Oh. Well, in this video, we're going to be ignoring the moral conundrum of devouring sapient life, and instead answering the question of, if the aliens within the Omnitrix were real, what would they taste like? Also, no, we're not tasting them in that way. I don't know why people kept being weird about it and going to the most NSFW conclusions about this video topic. You all need help, and that's coming from me. For this video, we're going to be looking at each of the aliens within the Omnitrix catalog from the original series, and guessing what they might taste like based on their closest real-world animal to said specific alien. We're specifically only going to go over aliens that it might be possible for humans to eat, so inedible species like Pyronites and Petrosapiens will be excluded. In fact, here's a full list of all the excluded alien species on screen now. We would go over all the aliens in this one video, but that would be a very long video, and me and my editor do want to try and release one video a week, so if you guys enjoy this video and want to see follow-up videos for Alien 4's Ultimate Alien and Omniverse, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment below letting me know that you want to see that. With all of that explained, and without further ado, let's get right into it. It's hero time! So starting off with Wild Mutt, and this actually immediately leads into a fun little lesson in nature. Something that we have to keep in mind for a lot of the species we're going to see in this video is that predatory animals generally taste worse than prey animals due to their diets often consisting of decaying matter, their bodies generally being leaner and more muscular, as well as a higher likelihood for parasites and toxins that you generally pick up from just eating rotting meat. For example, brown bears often pick up hookworms, roundworms, tapeworms, and so on. It's just not very pleasant. Generally, predatory animals don't taste very good as a result. We'll keep this in mind as we theorize the tastes of certain species throughout this video, including Wild Mutt here. It's no secret that Vulpamancers are likely predatory in nature just based on their general appearance and behavior in the wild, so they probably won't taste very good. If I had to assume what meat they most likely taste similar to, which is obviously the point of the video, I would want to assume it's somewhere between a porcupine and a lion, as these are the two animals that Vulpamancers just most remind me of personally. Porcupines are described as having rich, oily meat with a gamey taste, similar to pork, beef, or rabbit, and lions are described as tasting similar to lean, rich pork or venison, with a texture that can be described as both sweet and savory. All in all, some kind of stringy, oily pork-like taste. Personally, I don't really like the sound of that, but maybe one of you guys does. Next is Accelerate, and this one is somehow both easy and difficult at the same time. Due to their slim physiques and their speed-oriented body plans, it's fairly easy to say that they probably don't have much meat on their bones, so it's probably a more lean taste. But at the same time, going into further detail is a little bit difficult, because the closest animal that Accelerate reminds me of is some form of raptor, and obviously those haven't existed for millions of years, so I can't really definitively describe the kind of taste they would have. Scientists have proposed that raptors might taste gamey with a strong flavor similar to modern birds of prey or wild game birds, but that's just speculation obviously, we don't definitively know. So I suppose the closest lookalike would perhaps be a roadrunner, which is described as being tough and gristly with an iron-rich taste. That just sounds to me like chewing a lump of coagulated blood, and I don't want to eat that. Next is Grey Matter, and this one is nice and easy actually. He's clearly a frog, so he probably tastes like a frog. Frogs are described as tasting like a combination of chicken and fish, with a flavour that is lean and slightly earthy. And if you were wondering what that big brain in there might taste like, heaven forbid, science has the answers to satiate your curious mind. God help us all. Apparently, frog brains taste mild and sweet with a rich, fatty, and creamy texture. Honestly, Grey Matter doesn't sound disgusting to eat, even considering we do know that Galvants are at the very least an omnivorous species, so there would be some aspect of the consequences of a meat-based diet that I described before, but I could be convinced to eat a Galvan. Anyone seen Grey Matter fanboy lately, now that I think about it? Just curious. Next is forearms, and I've already dedicated an entire video in the past to how I think that Tetramans are reptilian in nature, so I'd like to assume the same goes for how they would taste. I do have some people in the comments of that video who were saying that forearms is likely an arachnid, and while I do disagree with that, the case can be still made, so we'll address that possibility here as well. There's obviously no four-armed reptiles in the real world, so it's hard to find a very good direct comparison for forearms here that we can base its potential taste off. So instead, I'll just go with the one that reminds me the most of forearms in terms of all its spikes and its coloration, that being the Thorny Devil. Thorny Devils, the animal famous for squirting blood out of its eyes when frightened, and if you've never heard of that before, then I'm sorry that I'm the one breaking the news to you, are apparently bitter and foul-tasting. Who would have guessed? Then, if you want to go down the more arachnid route, the closest comparison is once again one we can only really get through shared coloration, with the best match being being the Indian red scorpion, and that's only a little bit red, so it's not even that great of a comparison really. Even then, that wouldn't actually tell us anything, because people don't really eat them since they're one of the most venomous scorpion species on the planet. Overall, our evidence with Forearms and his flavor profile is inconclusive at best, with the best answer I have being that he just tastes bad, which you don't really need a rocket scientist to figure out, because they're mostly leathery skin and thick muscle anyway, two things notoriously crappy to eat. Next is Stinkfly, and this is a much easier comparison to make because Stinkfly is very clearly some kind of dragonfly. Dragonflies are said to taste sweet, rich, and buttery with a delicate lobster-like taste. That honestly sounds pretty good, but we also have to consider that Stinkfly's body produces a lot of mucus and apparently smells pretty bad, and animals that produce defensive foul odors are usually not very tasty, and animals that produce slime also usually taste pretty gross, though there are methods to prepare them in ways that would make them taste better. All in all, we can quite safely assume that Stinkfly probably has a fairly decent taste if you cook him right, but otherwise he's going to be a really gross meal to consume. Next is Ripjaws, another pretty easy one to put our finger on. Ripjaws is clearly inspired by some form of anglerfish, and to my surprise when researching for this video, scientists do actually have an answer for how these things taste. I'm not going to question how they got their hands on one to eat, it helped the video, great. Anglerfish apparently have a mild buttery taste, and some parts of their body have an elastic texture to them. Honestly, that just sounds shit. You're better off nibbling on a rubber chicken, really. I'm sorry, Ripjaws. But fun fact, apparently every part of the anglerfish is edible except for its bones. The more you know, I guess. Next is Ghost Freak, and while I really wanted to discuss what this species might taste like since they do clearly have meat on them, they're such an esoteric species that it's hard to find a suitable comparison. The best I could think of was some kind of octopus or squid since they have all the tendrils and the rubbery looking outer skin. So I started looking into species of cephalopod that could be a decent match for our ectoneurite friend here. And in terms of creepy aesthetics, I think the best comparison is absolutely the big fin squid, but since they're native to the deep sea, it's not very common to come across one, and therefore we haven't been able to get a taste of one, at least according to all the sources that I looked into. As a result, we'll have to settle for a different cephalopod, even though the big fin squid was my favorite candidate. Let's settle for the blue ringed octopus instead, since the tentacles have the similar patterns to the ectoneurite tendrils. Now, if you know anything about blue ringed octopi, you know that they produce a substance called tetrodotoxin, which is 1,000 times more toxic than cyanide. As a result, eating it is clearly off the table. Frankly, I think that fits. Eating an ectoneurite would definitely give you some kind of illness, if not just outright kill you. Now for Cannonbolt, my bouncing baby boy. Cannonbolt is clearly based on a pill bug, though there could also be some inspiration taken from pandas, just based off the body bulk and the patterns on the body. Let's keep these two animals in mind when discussing Cannonbolt's flavor. Pill bugs apparently taste like shrimp or shellfish when cooked, and panda meat famously tastes absolutely shit. So bad, in fact, that in 1983, a Chinese man named Leng Zizong, probably butchered that pronunciation, I'm so sorry, hated the taste so much that he decided to just feed the rest of the meat to his pigs. Bearing in mind that it's illegal to kill a giant panda, you think he would have stomached it and just eaten it himself since he went through all the effort, but it was clearly that bad. So basically, Cannonbolt probably tastes like really crappy shrimp. That's good. That means that people won't be eating my good boy anytime soon. Now for Wildvine, our first and only plant-based entry in the video. Wildvine is very clearly based on the Venus flytrap, which apparently tastes like a watery bean sprout or miner's lettuce, if you've ever had either of those. Interestingly, the sweet nectar that a Venus flytrap produces to lure in prey doesn't actually have a distinct taste for humans. So, if Wildvine had any kind of sweet nectar, we might not taste that either. So really, there's nothing making this guy taste sweet. Basically, Wildvine tastes watery and gross. Probably very tough to chew as well. Now for Spitter, who is based on a blowfish. Blowfish meat is apparently fibrous, uniquely crunchy, and features plenty of umami and a slightly sweet taste. That actually sounds really good, and since I don't think Spitter is toxic like a regular blowfish, you'd get to enjoy the taste without the risk of harm. The only downside is, of course, like I said with Stinkfly, species that produce slime usually taste bad, but perhaps the dish can taste good if prepared in a certain way. By the way, I'm really hoping that Spitter shows up in that new Ben 10 comic that's coming out next year. I mean, he's been missing in action for 19 years, he has almost no screen time to his name, like, come on, man of action. I'm not asking for much. Next is Arctiguana, and once again, we have a nice easy entry for our list here. Real-world iguanas are said to taste like chicken, but with a milder flavor and a slightly more rubbery or stringy texture. If you also factor in that polar manzadills probably share some polar bear traits as well, just due to the general body build and where they live, then Arctiguana might also taste a bit greasy and sweet. Sweet, greasy chicken. What an unusual flavor profile. Now for Blitzwolfer, another easy entry. Clearly based off of a grey wolf, meaning that it's lean meat with very little fat, a tough texture, and with an extremely strong flavor that one source I found described as, and I quote, "If the smell of wet dog was a taste. Truly fascinating that I don't want to try a bite." Trilobite? What the? Oh no. Anyway, next is Upchuck, and this is probably the easiest one to describe. It's ass. Upchuck tastes like ass. We've already discussed how an animal's diet can influence how it tastes, and gourmands can literally only digest inorganic matter. If they eat trash, they're gonna taste like trash. Just like how goats and pigs that eat trash taste worse than goats and pigs that don't eat trash. Not to mention, he's got super rubbery, stretchy skin, his stomach contains a trans-dimensional bladder dimension, which means that you're not only gonna taste what he's eaten, but what his entire species has eaten as a collective, and in general, that just sounds like a really bad time. He's probably edible, sure. I don't think that you can't consume him, but he's gonna have that kind of taste that just makes you throw up immediately. I guess that's very fitting. He's called Upchuck. Fair enough. Also, yes, that does imply, now that I think about it, that a starved gourmand might actually taste better than a well-fed gourmand, and that's really sad, actually. I don't like that. Next is Snarrow, and my editor described it best. Snarrow probably tastes like moldy toilet paper. The only reason that Snarrow is even allowed on this list as an edible species option is because there is such a thing as edible paper, such as rice paper and icing sheets, but something tells me that Snarrow is neither of those things, so he's only here so that I could have a little bit of education and go, hey, yeah, edible papers exist, isn't that cool? Now for Frankenstrike, another one that probably shouldn't be allowed on this list due to the fact that he looks like he's rotting and he's full of ferrous material like the stitches and the nodes on his body. The only reason he's here at all as an edible species option is that Vladats apparently ate them. Now, we aren't Vladats, we're humans, at least I think we are, but it does tell us that Transilians can be eaten by at least some species without issue, so we can work under the assumption that humans maybe can as well, just for the sake of some fun with this video. As for what he actually tastes like, my best bet, or what my mind really goes to, is an electric eel, which is apparently bony, bland, and tastes like tuna. It sounds fitting enough. Next is Ditto, and since Ditto has rubbery skin and is inspired by Yakko Warner from the Animaniacs, I want to say he basically tastes like a living cartoon. Now, how can we possibly describe that taste? Well, pens use ink, there is such a thing as squid ink spaghetti, so we have a precedent for edible ink. It's not completely out of reason. Bit of a stretch, but hey, this whole video is just one big list of assumptions anyway, so it's nothing really different. Squid ink is described as having a briny, subtle ocean flavor with a complex umami quality. That somehow explains a lot and explains very little at the same time, but the best other comparison I could find was that it tastes like oyster, but more savory. So that's the best I got for Ditto. I think he's edible, so I included him, but hard to say. Now for our final alien of this video, Eye Guy. Clearly taking inspiration from bats with his ears, that's our closest real example, so let's roll with it. Bats obviously come in various species, so I went out of my way to find the one with the biggest eyeballs possible, just because it's Eye Guy, which unsurprisingly was the large flying fox. How does a large flying fox taste? They're described as having a sweet taste, sometimes compared to venison or pigeon, but with a strong, unpleasant, rodent-like smell. Who would have guessed that a rodent smelled like a rodent? They might want to research that. I can't believe it myself, but it's what the study shows. Anyway, we know what the meat tastes like, but of course I had to double down and look into what the eyes taste like as well, since they are such a big part of Eye Guy's design, and also morbid curiosity is my vice. So apparently, the eyes of a bat have a rich, fatty taste and a jelly-like texture. Thanks, I hate it. But there you have it. That's my best guess at how all of the edible original series aliens might taste if they were a real creature that you could cut up and put on a plate. Again, ignoring the fact that they're also sapient beings, which is a moral conundrum in and of itself. But let me know in the comments below how you think these aliens might taste, which ones I listed off to you that you think sound the most tasty and that you'd be most likely to try in real life at least once. And now, let's finish off the video with one last thank you to our channel members on screen right now. You can help support me like they do by becoming a channel member today or donating to my PayPal with the link in the description. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment if you want to see sequels of this video going over all the other Omnitrix aliens. And with all of that very quickly said, I'll be seeing you all next time. Adios, fellow heroes.